Well, hello there, and thank you for joining me for a very special Kirby episode. That's because it's not actually an episode in my playthrough. That's because I beat the game. I 100%ed the game, and you should check that out. It was a lot of fun. The whole playthrough was fun. You should check out the whole playthrough. I'll link it right here. Wow. So since my playthrough is over, I figured I want to do a kind of Kirby review. I want to send off the Kirby game in a very honorable fashion, but you know, the game's been reviewed. It's been done. I didn't want to just review a game that's already been reviewed, so I decided to make a ranking list. It's a different one than you're probably expecting. Actually, no, you probably are expecting it because you've clicked on it, presumably based on the title. So then you know that I am ranking all of the Kirby and the Forgotten Land bosses based on bangability. That's right, folks. So before I start this list and before I get into it, I just want to make something very clear. This is all for fun. You know, this isn't fact or anything. This is my own personal opinion based on my own personal biases. And also, I am not a furry, okay? Okay? Everybody? Okay? So this is all just in good fun. We're gonna have some good fun. So let's get started. So I think before we get started on the actual ranking of these bosses, I should first explain what is bangability, at least what it is to me. So, in my mind, bangability is the person that you wanna bang. What?
Well, duh.
So, when I define bangability, I'm defining it as who would I want to do if I saw them in a nightclub and I was looking for a one-night stand. I'm not ranking them based on long-term partnership or whether they'd be a good friend. That is a different ranking list that I can make if you'd like me to. If you want me to rank them based on who I'd marry, or who I would be best friends with, who I would do a Ocean's 11 heist with, all of them, I think there are 11 of them, so that would be perfect. In fact, I'd be the odd man out. But this is not what that list is. This is who would I take home in that one night stand. But within that definition, there are 3 subcategories. So for the purposes of this list, I have broken down the concept of bangability into 3 separate categories that can be ranked on a scale of 1 to 10. Those categories are as follows. Category A is looks. I feel like this one's self-explanatory. We're swimming in the shallow end for this category. What can I say? We're here to have a good time, folks. Category B is personality. So I know this makes it sound like I'm contradicting myself because I just went on this whole thing about how I am not making this list based on friendship or who I'd want to marry or whatever, but personality is still important even in a one-night stand. If you're hitting someone up at a bar and they start giving you vibes of being creepy or gross in some way, personality-wise, you don't want to bang that person. You're gonna move on to someone who's not creepy and gross. That's what I mean. Even in a one-night stand, you need to have standards, people. Remember that. In category C, the likelihood to give back, if you know what I mean. Let's be honest with ourselves, folks. We don't want a selfish lover. Of course, you're never gonna really know until you get in bed with them, but there are ways that you can kind of discern that based on other aspects of their personality. In some ways, Category C is a subcategory of Category B, but I think it is distinct enough that it deserves its own separate ranking. So with all that out of the way, let's move on to talking about the bosses. So what bosses am I actually going to be ranking on this list? I'm going to focus on all the big main bosses, and I'm not going to include the mini bosses. I do enjoy fighting the mini bosses, but I don't really feel like I got to know them on the same level that I got to, quote unquote, know the main bosses. Please comment down below if you want to see where the mini bosses rank in this list, and I'll be sure to put out a video that kind of squeezes them in there, but for now let's just focus on the main guys. And also, I just want to point out that I will be lumping together the Phantom characters with their original versions. I felt like the Phantom characters are essentially just the original versions, decked out in their fanciest rave gear and on way too much ecstasy. So that's what I'm going with. And finally, with all of that explanation and exposition out of the way, let's move on to the rankings. Okay, starting in at number 11, also known as our least bangable boss of the game, we have Fecto Forgo, with an average of 0 out of 10. In the looks department, I gave him a 0. Gross, nasty, unacceptable. In the personality department, I gave him a 0. Gross, nasty, unacceptable. And in the generosity department, I gave him a 0. Gross, nasty, unacceptable. Moving on. Coming in at number 10 is Chaos Alphalus with an average of 1 out of 10. Just slightly more bangable than Fecto Forgo, but not a lot. In the looks department, I gave them a 3. Not gonna lie, they could look a lot worse, but they lose points for being absolutely and utterly terrifying. In the personality department, I gave them a 0. They're an asshole. What's more to be said? And in the generosity category, I gave them a 0. I don't know why, but when I look at this, I just think, you coined the phrase pump and dump, didn't you? I don't know how you did it, but you did it, didn't you? Alright, coming in at number 9 with an average of 1.13 is Fecto Alphalus. Just barely scraping by ahead of their cousin, Chaos Alphalus. Fecto Alphalus also ranks as 3 in the looks department. They're pretty cool to look at, but also too threatening to want to approach, and that's never good when you're assessing bangability. And in the personality department, this is the only difference between them and Chaos Alphalus. I gave them a 1. Chaos Alphalus took us to a completely other realm, along with the rest of his bosses in the Ultimate Cup C. Fecto Alphalus at least let people watch the battle. At least let people enjoy themselves. The commentator was there. He was making little comments. He was cracking wise. Where's the fun in a tournament that no one can watch? Moving on to the generosity category, I also gave them a 0. Don't ask me why I think this, but for some reason I just think they fuck exactly like BoJack Horseman would.
Are you close?
No.
How about now?
No.
Now?
You're not even inside of me.
Oh, God! Did you get there?
And number 8 on our list, sitting comfortably with an average of 3, is Silly Dillo and the Phantom Silly Dillo. For his looks, I gave him a 3. I'm sorry, Dill, but I'm just not vibing with what you're looking like, and I'm willing to bet I'm not the only one who feels this way, considering he had to build his own girlfriend. Can't seem to find a live one to agree to go on a date with him. Although that could have something to do with his personality, which is also ranked as a 3. This one was a tough one for me. On the one hand, he takes his girlfriend out dancing. On the other hand, he hurls her at his enemies. And still, on a third separate hand, anybody who has to build their own partner should probably be side-eyed just a little bit. So, yeah. I think it was the third hand that really brought down his score in this category. And finally, generosity. I ranked him 3 in generosity because while it seems like he'd spend a lot of time and attention on you, it seems like that might not be a good thing in this case. I'm thinking his attention would be less of the Casanova style attention and more of the Ed Gein style of attention, so it's not something you want. Moving on to number 7, we have Morpho Knight with an average of 3.33. While we will be getting to Meta Knight in a later category, right now I am going to be comparing him to Morpho Knight for just a moment. Morpho Knight and Meta Knight do look a lot alike. I mean, I would call them cousins. But Morpho Knight does actually score higher than Meta Knight in the looks category because of them wings. Gorgeous. Can't say no to a classy pair of wings. I know I can't anyway. Anyone else with me? For the personality category, I gave him a 3. Again, I have to bring in a comparison to Meta Knight. He is nowhere near as caring as Meta Knight is characterized as being. But I do give him bonus points in the personality category for being so in touch with his femininity. Those butterflies are a vibe and I absolutely adore them. Finally, the generosity category. Again, I have to bring in comparisons to his cousin. He is not nearly as protective as his cousin, and I get the sense that he is way more self-centered and would really only focus on himself. If you got there, it would really just be a byproduct rather than a focus. Alright, marking our halfway point on this list is our number 6 slot. Tropic Woods and Phantom Tropic Woods. He has an average of 4.33, which I know you might be surprised about, considering his looks and personality rankings, but once you get to generosity, I think you'll understand why he's ranked higher on this list than others. So for the looks category, I did give him a 1. Dude's a tree. I mean, he could be worse to look at, but he's also just a tree. He's not even like a smoke show like his dad, the Deku Tree, or his grandmother Willow. It's like, he didn't inherit any of those genes. So, sorry Deku Tree Jr., you are a 1 in the looks category. For the personality category, I gave him a 2. Deku Tree Jr. definitely has the least amount of personality of all the remaining bosses on this list. There's just not much going on. Like I said before, dude's a tree, and he doesn't really do much with the treeness. I will say this though, he has some points for his personality because he is willing to cry, and not everybody is as in touch with their emotions as he is. And finally, the generosity category, you might be wondering, why is he a 10? And then you realize, he's basically just a mouth. That's really all he has to work with, if you know what I'm saying. Let's just say, he's kind of generous by default. And that high generosity score is really what put him over the top for the rankings. He definitely would have fallen below Morpho Knight, and maybe even below Silly Dillo, if it wasn't for the fact that he's got nothing else to work with. And coming in with our number 5 slot, we finally have someone who breaks above the 5-point halfway mark. That's right, Goramondo has an average of 5.66, which means we are officially getting into the more bangable of our bosses. So Goramondo and Phantom Goramondo are an 8 in the looks department. I mean, the dude clearly hits the gym, and he works on his appearance a lot. I mean, he is the only Kirby boss in the game who wears jewelry. He thinks about what he looks like. He thinks about how he presents himself, and I respect that. But he does take a hit because, well, I'm sorry, Goramondo, but you skip leg day a little too often. And this whole list is here to be judgy. So here I am being judgy, you little legs.
Baby legs.
His personality is a 5. He seems like he'd be one of those gym bros who's just a little too intense. But worse, he also seems like one of those bros who just does not respect boundaries. I mean, look, I too want to pick up Kirby and squish him between my fingers, but I refrain because I am not a monster, and I respect that Kirby is his own being who deserves to not be squished between people's fingers like a booger. Kirby is not a booger. And in the generosity category, I gave him a 4. He definitely seems like he sees you more as a means to an end. I think I said this for Morpho Knight, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm gonna say it here again. It seems like if you got there, he wouldn't really be upset about it, but it also seems like that is not his goal, and if you don't get there, he does not care. That is the vibe I pick up from Goramondo. Moving on to our number 4 category, we have Meta Knight and Phantom Meta Knight with an average of 7.33. That's right, we have an almost 2-point jump in the averages, and they're only going to get higher from here because we are getting into the really bangable now. Meta Knight is definitely ranked very high on the list. His lowest category is definitely his looks. He's a round boy, and that means he's an adorable boy. And adorable does not always equal sexy. But his personality is a 9. I mean, he is known as a protector. So much so that people have been going around graffitiing "Thank you Meta Knight" on the side of the Coliseum. And then if you tell that to the Waddle Dee at the password store, he'll just give you a present. Amazing! That's the power of Meta Knight. In fact, I would like to read you just a small selection from the Kirby Wiki about Meta Knight. It is also stated that Fecto Forgo had attempted to possess him like King Deedles, but Meta Knight's willpower proved too much and he was able to escape. Yeah, that's right. Meta Knight's personality is so strong that he was able to actually overcome brainwashing.
She's an icon, she's a legend, and she is the moment.
And finally, generosity. I gave him a 9. I actually think he'd be very focused on you, probably to the detriment of his own enjoyment. Which, that's your responsibility. You gotta give just as much as you get. That's just a public service announcement for everyone here. I know I'm talking about generosity as it benefits us, but I just want to make sure we all understand here. It's a two-way street. we're being just as generous as they're being to us. You get what you give. That's why the experiences higher up on this list are very unenjoyable for every party involved, as they should be. Alright, I think I've gone off the rails here. Where am I? Who am I? What's going on? Ah, that's right. We're getting in to the top 3. Starting with King Deedles himself. And I'm not just talking about Deedles. King Deedles, Forgo Deedles, Phantom Deedles, and Forgo Phantom Deedles. That's a lot of Deedles. But regardless of what form he takes, he has an 8 in looks. He's adorable, but in the way that is attractive and bangable. I believe in certain communities he may be described as a bear.
Right to jail.
And Deedle's personality is a 9. Straight up, no doubt about it. I love me some Deedles. So since this was the first meeting I had with the Deeds in my life, I didn't know at first that he was more of a good guy than he is a bad guy, but by the end of the game, I absolutely adored this man. He is wonderful. Once he's returned to his true self and was freed from the control of brainwashing, there is no doubt that his personality is great. I mean, there is a reason that his Ds love him so much. That being said, it is noted that he's kind of lazy and a little bit selfish. That has been noted. So unfortunately, that does take off a point from his personality. But that self-sacrifice he did to save that little fallen D brings his personality right back up to a 9. And finally, the generosity category is a 6. As I said in the personality category, it's been noted in several separate areas that Deeds is lazy. He's definitely not someone who's actually down for, like, hard work. But at the same time, as I mentioned before, he sacrificed himself to save one little Waddle Dee. He didn't need to do that, but he did. And I can't call him completely selfish when he did something so completely selfless. It would have been easier to simply sacrifice that D for the greater good. He's technically the D's leader, and the loss of the leader would be much more detrimental to the group than the loss of a single member of the group. But it did not matter to the Deeds. The Deeds said no. No D left behind. And he ran out there and he just chucked that little boy. He chucked him to safety. And for that, his generosity score is above a 5. We're now down to our final 2. Ooh. And coming in second on our list, the second most bangable boss of Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Leongar, or Leon as I like to call him. You know, we're friends. He has an average of 8. In the looks department, he's a solid 9. Dude's a Chad. The dude is a thick Chad. What else can I say? Note where Gorimondo has skipped leg day, Leongar did not. For the personality score, this might be controversial, but I gave him a 9. In my opinion, there's a reason Carol followed him to the end of the earth and changed her name for him. He's a beloved leader, and that's gotta mean something. And it's true, we spent the majority of the game fighting him and only getting to know his brainwashed version. But the very little that we did get to know about him through Carol and through interacting with him at the very end of the game, the dude's awesome. Let's just be real here. The dude's even down for an impromptu dance party once he's warmed up to it. It took him a second to really kind of get his bearings on what was even going on, but once he figured it out, he was down to party. And I just love that willingness to just break it down whenever. I too am like that. And I too give my personality a 9. And finally, going into the generosity category, I gave Leon a solid 6. I don't think he's as generous as he could be, but I do think he's more generous than we'd expect him to be. I did call him a Chad earlier, and I think earlier in his life he probably was a little more selfish in that regards, but I do think his friendship with Carol has a lot of influence on his personality, in all aspects of his personality, and so I think that would bleed over into his generosity. I definitely get the sense that he would be more focused on himself, but he would try to help you along. If you asked. And finally, the #1 spot. The most bangable boss in Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Drum roll, please. It's Clawreline. If you've watched my playthroughs, I seriously doubt you're surprised by this at all. That's right, folks. She has an average of 10 out of 10. She has gotten a perfect score.
I'm not a furry.
The looks, I gave her a 10. I mean, come on. For personality, I gave her a 10. She is a dedicated and loyal friend. I mentioned this in the Leon section, but I will mention it again. She followed Leon to the ends of the earth. She was willing to go anywhere for him, and she even changed her name from Carol to Clawreline just because she needed to, because Leon had lost his frickin' mind, and she needed to be with him to make sure he was okay. What a ride or die friend. You wish you had a friend like Clawreline. And finally, generosity. I gave her a 10. Okay, so I'm not here to say that every selfless person is generous in bed. But, I mean, aren't they? I mean, the concept of selflessness as a personality trait would most likely spill over into their sexual personality as well. So yes, I'm willing to bet that Clawreline is a very generous partner, because she is the most selfless boss we've ever met in the game. Not only did she care enough about her friend to stage a rescue party for them to go in after him, but she also cared enough about the enemy to nurse him back to health. I don't know if anyone remembers this. I do, because it's been burned into my soul. But Atfl revealed at the end of the game that Clawreline basically saved his life.
I'm really glad we were able to find Leongar. Oops, I mean Leon, and bring him back. I haven't forgotten, you know, when I used up all my powers to close the connection between worlds. You saved me, Clawreline. You kept me alive and made sure I'd be able to see Kirby again. You helped me when I needed it, and we helped you in return. Now we can all be friends together.
Yes, we can. If it wasn't for Clawreline, we would not have our boy back. Okay? So, 10 out of 10 generosity. There's no way that she is not just as selfless in all aspects of her life. Alright guys, that's gonna do it for me. I can't believe this was a video I actually decided to make. I thought about it, I scripted it, I recorded it, I edited it, and then I posted it on the internet for people to watch. And yeah, I don't feel bad about it. I would like to remind everybody here watching that
I'm not a furry.
just in case anyone forgot, just wanted to remind everybody here. This was a new kind of format for me. It's definitely different than the kind of format I'm used to making. It's a lot of fun to make. If you have any list ideas that you want me to make, I would absolutely be happy to make a ranking by request. So, if you made it this far, thank you so much for joining me today. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. If you like this video, hit that like button. If you hated this video, hit that dislike button. And either way, hit subscribe. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.